Hello everyone, Grandpa Ron here again. Hope you're all well and happy today. It's a beautiful day here, looking out the window at sunshine. It's supposed to get up to 62 degrees today, so that's pretty good for here in Montana. Today we're going to get back into our very basic Bible study. We're going to look at Genesis chapter 40 and continue with the life of Joseph in Egypt. Remember, his brothers were jealous of him, hated him. They were going to kill him, but instead they sold him to a caravan. The caravan took him to Egypt. He was sold to the Potiphar, who was the chief of the guards. But Potiphar's wife lied about Joseph, and Joseph wound up in prison. So now we're going to see what happens in this next phase. So chapter 40, verse 1. Then it came about after these things, the cupbearer and the baker for the king of Egypt offended their lord, the king of Egypt. Now the cupbearer and baker were very important positions. The cupbearer, as you probably know, would actually taste the wine or whatever the Pharaoh was going to drink to see if it was poison. And if the cupbearer didn't drop dead, then the Pharaoh would drink it. And the baker, we think of a baker as somebody that bakes bread and everything, but this baker was in charge of all the baking, the meats and the breads and everything. So he was very important too, probably supervised hundreds of people, but he was the head chef, so to speak. And he had an obligation to protect the Pharaoh as well. There's a lot of intrigue and suspicions and plots, things like that. And we don't know what these guys did, but they offended the Pharaoh, and they wound up in jail. Verse 2, and Pharaoh was furious with his two officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker. So he put them in confinement in the house of the captain of the bodyguard in the jail, the same place where Joseph was in prison. So this is Potiphar, the chief, the captain of the bodyguard. It could be that they were in there while the matter was being investigated. It could be that the Pharaoh was just bad with them and was being vindictive. We don't know, but they wound up in prison. Verse 4. And the captain of the bodyguard put Joseph in charge of them, and he took care of them, and they were in confinement for some time. Then the cupbearer and the baker for the king of Egypt, who were confined in jail, both had a dream the same night, each man with his own dream, and each dream with his own interpretation. So we know that Joseph had dreams, and he shared them with his brothers and mother and father, and they weren't very pleased with those dreams. But we're going to see that Joseph hasn't given up on trusting the Lord. He's prospering, as we saw in the last chapter. He's doing well, and he's giving God the credit. The captain of the bodyguard and the jailer knew that he was prospering and that it was because of his God. So he had to be giving his God the credit. Verse 6, when Joseph came to them in the morning and observed them, behold, they were dejected. And he asked Pharaoh's officials who were with him in confinement in his master's house, why are your faces so sad today? So he had a concern. I mean, he was coping with his confinement very well. He was trusting God. It wasn't pleasant for him. But he wasn't letting it get him down. He knew that God had a plan and a purpose. So he was able to withstand this confinement in relatively good spirits. But he was concerned with these other men, which speaks well of Joseph. Verse 8. Then they said to him, "We have had a dream, and there is no one to interpret it." Then Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell it to me, please." He's got a willingness to help these men and a trust and commitment that God will interpret these dreams. Verse 9, so the chief cupbearer told his dream to Joseph and said to him, "In my dream, behold, there was a vine in front of me, and on the vine were 3 branches, and as it was budding, its blossoms came out, and its clusters produced ripe grapes. Now Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, so I took the grapes and squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and I put the cup into Pharaoh's hand." So it's kind of an accelerated vineyard. He sees the vines, the blossoms, the grapes, makes wine out of it, gives it to the Pharaoh. Verse 12. Then Joseph said to him, "This is the interpretation of it. The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 more days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your office, and you will put Pharaoh's cup into his hands, according to your former custom when you were his cupbearer. Only keep me in mind when it goes well with you, and please do me a kindness by mentioning me to Pharaoh and get me out of this house." So that's not an unreasonable request. He's interpreted the dream. He wants out. It's not pleasant there. He's making the best of it, trusting God, but it's not pleasant. He wants out. Verse 15. For I was in fact kidnapped from the land of the Hebrews, and even here I have done nothing that they should have put me into the dungeon. Verse 16. When the chief baker saw that he had interpreted favorably, he said to Joseph, I also saw in my dream, and behold, there were 3 baskets of white bread on my head, and in the top basket there were some of all sorts of baked food for Pharaoh, and the birds were eating them out of the basket on my head. I guess when they would carry the food from where they cooked it into the Pharaoh's presence, there would be birds and things flying around. That wasn't uncommon. And I saw one commentator that said in Egypt these birds were actually worshipped, and you couldn't kill them or anything like that. And they would sometimes swoop down and steal food like that. Verse 18. Then Joseph answered and said, This is its interpretation. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 more days, Pharaoh will lift up your head from you and will hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat your flesh off of you. Thus it came about on the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, that he made a feast for all his servants, and he lifted up the head of the chief cupbearer and head of the chief baker among his servants. And he restored the chief cupbearer to his office, and he put the cup in Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker, just as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. That's not an uncommon thing to forget. I'm sure the cupbearer was ecstatic about having his position restored and not having the same fate as the baker, being hanged. So in his excitement, he forgot to mention Joseph. Now in the next chapters, we're going to see how he eventually does remember Joseph in God's timing. In the fullness of time, God has these things work out, and the cupbearer will remember Joseph, and Joseph will have another opportunity to do some interpreting. So even though this is a short one, we'll stop here, and next time we'll pick up with the story and see how Joseph interprets Pharaoh's dreams, and how his dreams that he had years before start to come to fruition in the land of Egypt. Thanks for watching, and I hope you'll watch the next one. In the meantime, God bless. See you later. Bye-bye.